A single dad saw smoke coming from an abandoned house, completely unaware the voice inside would shatter the carefully constructed walls he'd built around his heart. Rain pounded against the windshield as Reid guided his old pickup through Portland's industrial district. The afternoon sky hung heavy with gray clouds, the kind that made the city feel smaller, more claustrophobic. He was heading home after delivering a restored dresser to a client across town, his mind already on the unfinished bookshelf waiting in his workshop. Then he saw it, smoke. Gray tendrils curling against the darkening sky, rising from the abandoned Hartley mansion that had stood empty for 3 years. The same 3 years since everything changed. Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles going white. His firefighter instinct screamed at him to pull over, to assess, to act. But he'd promised himself he was done with fire, done with rescue, done with the kind of heroism that cost everything that he should drive past. Pick up speed, get home to the safety of his workshop, and call 911 from there like any sensible civilian would do. Then he heard it, a voice. Female, calling for help with the kind of desperation that bypassed logic and went straight to the part of him he'd tried to bury. But something in that voice, something in the specific tone and cadence, made Marcus's entire body go rigid. His foot found the brake. The truck rolled to a stop. Marcus stared at the burning building, his right hand trembling slightly as it moved toward the door handle. The burn scar on his left forearm, usually hidden beneath his sleeve, caught the afternoon light as fabric pulled back. He sat frozen, unable to move forward or back, while smoke continued its relentless climb toward the darkening sky. Neither he nor the woman trapped inside knew that this moment would change absolutely everything. Reid measured his life in sawdust and promises kept to a memory that deserved so much more than a broken man playing survivor. Each morning began the same way. He woke before dawn in the apartment above his workshop, careful not to let the floorboards creak as he moved through the darkness. Coffee brewed while he reviewed the day's custom furniture orders, his calloused fingers tracing pencil lines on blueprints that represented next month's rent, the therapy bills he'd stopped attending, the medical savings account he contributed to religiously out of guilt. By 6:30, he'd be in the workshop below, surrounded by the scent of pine and possibility. Fire-damaged furniture filled one corner, pieces he salvaged from estate sales and insurance liquidations. Burned oak tables, smoke-stained dressers, cabinets with charred edges. He restored them all with patient hands that understood destruction intimately. The burn scar on his left forearm remained his constant companion. 3 years old now, angry pink tissue that ran from wrist to elbow. He kept it covered, always long sleeves regardless of Portland's rare heat waves. His workshop neighbors knew him as reliable but distant. The kind of man who'd fix a broken chair leg without charging labor, who'd drop off custom bookends for the elderly couple upstairs, who'd nod politely at invitations to neighborhood gatherings before declining with practiced efficiency. In his bedroom closet, his firefighter turnout gear still hung like a ghost. Helmet on the top shelf, gathering dust. Jacket with Reid stenciled across the back, the letters fading but still legible. Boots positioned at attention, forever waiting for feet that would never fill them again, that he couldn't throw them away. He couldn't wear them either. Somewhere between those two impossibilities, Marcus had built a life that functioned without ever truly living. 30 miles across Portland, Elena Morrison packed her investigation equipment with the methodical precision of someone who'd learned that preparation was the only thing standing between truth and burial. Her studio apartment told the story of professional collapse condensed into 400 square feet. One wall displayed case files arranged in careful rows, each folder representing a fire that shouldn't have happened. Red string connected photographs, witness statements, property records, creating a web of corruption that most people refuse to see. The centerpiece of her obsession occupied the largest section. Hartley warehouse fire. Sarah Reid, deceased. Elena's fingers traced the timeline she'd constructed 3 years ago. The warehouse that burned too hot, too fast. The safety violations ignored by inspectors who'd received convenient bonuses. The corporate structure designed specifically to obscure liability. And at the center of it all, one woman who'd been working late, trapped by flames that never should have reached her, on Elena's desk. A termination letter from the Oregon State Fire Marshal's office sat framed in ironic tribute. Failure to demonstrate team cooperation and appropriate professional boundaries. Translation: she'd refused to look the way when her investigation revealed systematic arson disguised as accidents. Her medical degree and fire investigation certification hung beside it, credentials that meant nothing when speaking truth made you unemployable. Today's target was the abandoned Hartley mansion, another property in the same corporate portfolio. Elena had received an anonymous tip about document storage in the old estate office, records that might finally prove the pattern she'd been chasing for 3 years. She loaded her thermal imaging camera, evidence collection kit, and backup batteries into her weather backpack. Her respirator hung from one strap, a reminder that investigation meant entering dangerous spaces others avoided. Elena checked her phone one last time before heading out. No missed calls, no messages. Nobody knew where she was going. Exactly as it had been since the day she chose integrity over career security. Marcus's paralysis shattered when the voice inside screamed a second time, raw panic overriding whatever strange recognition had frozen him. He was out of the truck before conscious thought could stop him, his body moving on autopilot through the mansion's broken front entrance. Smoke hit him immediately, the familiar acrid taste that brought memories screaming back. But his mind had already shifted into the analytical mode that once defined him. Read the smoke. Gray meant smoldering, not full combustion yet. Time existed, but not much. Test the floor. Solid enough, but the creaking suggested structural compromise. Follow the voice. Coming from the east wing, second story. Marcus navigated by instinct and memory, his firefighter training creating a map through chaos. The mansion's layout felt familiar, though he'd never responded to a call here. Something about the architecture, the way smoke moved through Victorian-era construction, that he found her in what had once been a study, trapped beneath a fallen beam that had collapsed from the deteriorating ceiling. Investigation equipment scattered around her like evidence of interrupted work. A thermal camera, evidence bags, document folders, and then their eyes met, recognition hit like a physical blow. You, Marcus breathed, the single word carrying 3 years of resentment, grief, and shock. Elena Morrison. The fire investigator whose report had destroyed his career, whose testimony had exposed the corruption that got him suspended, whose name he'd cursed in the dark hours after Sarah's funeral. Marcus Reid. Her voice held exhaustion beyond any physical pain. Of all the people, the beam across her leg prevented movement. Blood seeped through torn cargo pants. And somewhere below them, the fire that had been smoldering began to find its voice. Marcus faced a choice. Save the woman who'd ended everything, or let the past burn them both. For 3 seconds that felt like eternity, Marcus stood frozen by a different kind of paralysis. This woman had written the report that ended everything. Her investigation had exposed the safety violations his captain ordered him to ignore. Her testimony had made him choose between his badge and his integrity. And now she was bleeding out under a beam while fire consumed the building around them. Are you going to stand there? Or are you going to help? Elena's voice cut through his spiral, sharp with pain, but steady with purpose. Training overrode emotion. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her, hands already assessing the situation with professional efficiency. Beams too heavy to lift alone, he muttered, mind racing through options. I need leverage. Metal filing cabinet. Northeast corner. Elena's investigator brain was working despite her situation. Use the drawer as a fulcrum. Their eyes met briefly, and something passed between them. Recognition of complementary expertise. His physical strength and fire behavior knowledge. Her analytical precision and structural assessment. Your report, Marcus grunted as he positioned the drawer, muscles straining, ruined my life. Your captain's cover-up killed your wife. Elena's response came between gritted teeth as he worked. I wrote the truth. That's all I've ever done. The beam shifted. Marcus's burn scar screamed in protest as he leveraged his full weight against the makeshift tool. Elena dragged herself backward, inch by agonizing inch, her hands finding purchase on the smoke-damaged floor. "Can you walk? Can you stop asking stupid questions?" But she accepted his offered hand, their fingers closing around each other's wrists with the grip firefighters used when lives depended on not letting go. The building groaned around them, a death rattle of collapsing structure. "East stairwell," Marcus said. "It'll be our only way out." Elena nodded, and together they moved toward survival. They collapsed on a mansion's front lawn as the first fire engine screamed around the corner, red lights painting the smoke-filled sky in urgent pulses. Marcus's lungs burned, his muscles trembled, and somewhere in the chaos his carefully constructed emotional distance had cracked wide open. Paramedics swarmed immediately. One team descended on Elena, cutting away her pant leg to assess the injury. Another checked Marcus for smoke inhalation, their practiced efficiency a reminder of the brotherhood he'd left behind. Marcus watched from a distance as police officers approached with questions. How'd he know someone was inside? What was his relationship to the property? And the woman, what was she doing in an abandoned building? Elena's answer came steady despite obvious pain. "I'm a fire investigator. I received information about potential arson evidence stored on site. When I entered the structure, someone sealed the exits and started a fire." The words hung in the smoke-thick air, not an accident. Attempted murder, a familiar voice cut through the emergency response chaos. "Marcus? Jesus Christ. What the hell happened?" His sister Sarah Chun pushed through the gathering crowd, her nurse's scrubs suggesting she'd come straight from her shift at Portland General. At 32, she was 2 years younger than Marcus, but had always been the more grounded of the two siblings. Her dark eyes swept over him, checking for injuries with professional efficiency before relief transformed into anger. "You went into a burning building," she stated flatly. "After 3 years of refusing to even talk about fire, you just ran into a burning building." Marcus looked at the woman wrapped in an emergency blanket, blood seeping through fresh bandages. Elena Morrison, the investigator who destroyed his career, who'd been investigating the same corruption that killed his wife, who someone had just tried to kill. "I couldn't just drive away," he said quietly. Sarah's expression softened slightly. "No," she agreed. "You never could." 3 days later, Elena Morrison limped into Marcus's workshop carrying a battered laptop case and a determination that injury couldn't diminish. Marcus looked up from the cherrywood desk he was finishing, surprise evident on his weathered face. Sarah, who'd been helping him organize invoices at his workbench, straightened immediately, her protective instincts visible in the way she positioned herself between Marcus and the unexpected visitor. "I need your help." Elena's voice carried no apology for the intrusion. She set the laptop on his workbench, fingers already pulling up files. "Everything I had in the mansion burned, but I keep cloud backups. I need someone who understands fire behavior to interpret these patterns." Marcus wiped sawdust from his hands, approaching slowly. "Why would I help you?" "Because the warehouse that killed Sarah was owned by Hartley Properties." Elena's words hit like hammer strikes. She pulled up a document showing property records. Same company that owns the mansion, and 4 other buildings that have conveniently burned in the past 3 years. Each one fully insured. Each investigation concluding accidental cause. The screen displayed burn pattern photographs, structural analysis reports, insurance claims summaries. Marcus's trained eye began connecting dots he'd refused to see through the fog of grief. Sarah wasn't just a victim, Elena continued quietly. She was working late because she'd discovered accounting irregularities. Your captain didn't just cover up safety violations. He was paid to ensure the fire looked accidental. Sarah Chun stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "You're saying my sister-in-law was murdered? And you can prove it." "I can," Elena said, "but I need help. Someone who knows fire behavior. Someone who has as much reason as I do to want justice." Marcus looked at his sister, then back at Elena. The protective father had been replaced by something else. Someone who'd lost too much to let it happen to anyone else. "One condition," he finally said. "We do this carefully. No unnecessary risks." "Agreed. Partners." The word hung between them. Weighted with history and possibility, neither was ready to. Weeks dissolved into routine that felt dangerously like belonging. Elena arrived each afternoon as Marcus finished his restoration work, her investigation equipment gradually claiming space beside his woodworking tools. They worked in concentrated silence, broken only by Sarah's occasional visits, bringing takeout and asking pointed questions that made both of them uncomfortable. Marcus discovered Elena survived primarily on gas station coffee and granola bars eaten while driving between leads. He started preparing extra portions at dinner, telling himself it was simple efficiency. Sarah had other ideas, showing up with groceries and accidentally making enough food for 3. "It's sad eating alone," Sarah announced one evening, setting 3 places at Marcus's small kitchen table without asking permission. Elena accepted with grace that suggested she understood loneliness intimately. Over pasta and garlic bread, they reviewed burn pattern analyses. Elena's forensic methodology complemented Marcus's instinctive understanding of how fire moved through structures. She thought in evidence chains and legal standards. He thought in heat signatures and oxygen flow. Together, they constructed a case that neither could have built alone. One night, reviewing photographs from the warehouse fire, Elena quietly broke the professional distance they'd maintained. "I'm sorry," she said, not looking at him. "Not for writing the truth, but for how that truth destroyed your life when it should have destroyed the people actually responsible." Marcus's hands stilled on the document he'd been examining. "My captain told me reporting the violations would end my career. That family men didn't rock boats." His voice carried 3 years of suppressed guilt. "I chose silence. Sarah paid the price. You were put in an impossible situation. So were you." Their eyes met across the table, scattered with evidence of shared tragedy. "You lost everything for doing what I was too afraid to do." Sarah, who'd been washing dishes in the kitchen, appeared in the doorway with an expression that suggested she'd heard more than they'd intended to share. The break-in happened on a Tuesday night, hours after Elena left with copies of their compiled evidence, planning to submit everything to federal investigators by week's end. Marcus discovered the destruction at dawn when he went down to the workshop. File cabinets forced open, their careful documentation scattered and shredded. His computer hard drive removed entirely. Evidence photographs torn from the wall where they'd been organizing the timeline to spray painted across his workbench in angry red letters. Some fire should stay out. But what froze his blood was the detail police found during their investigation. His apartment door lock showed signs of tampering. Someone had tested entry while he slept, measured vulnerabilities, prepared for something worse than vandalism. Sarah arrived within minutes of his call, her face pale but determined. "You're staying with me tonight. Both of you." She looked at Elena, who'd shown up with the police. "They're escalating. This isn't just intimidation anymore." When Elena argued they were close to justice, that backing down meant Sarah Reid died for nothing. Marcus's response came hard and final. "I can't do this." His voice carried a flatness that suggested decision already made. "Someone broke into my home because of this investigation. That's where I draw the line. Marcus, we're almost there. I don't care." The words came out harsh, driven by fear that overrode everything else. "I lost Sarah to this. I won't lose anyone else. Whatever justice you're chasing isn't worth it." Elena's expression shifted through hurt to understanding to resignation. "I get it. Safety first. It should be." She gathered her laptop, her files, the investigation that had consumed months of collaboration. "For what it's worth, I copied everything before coming today. The evidence is secure." "Elena, no, you're right." She paused at the door, not looking back. "I've been alone since I chose truth over security. I understand how that decision gets made." Her voice carried weight of years fighting battles solo. "I'll finish this myself." The door closed behind her, leaving Marcus in his vandalized workshop surrounded by the wreckage of something more than an investigation. 5 days of silence felt like 5 years. Marcus threw himself into furniture orders, his hands creating beauty while his mind replayed Elena's departure on an endless loop. Sarah visited daily, her concern evident in the way she'd arrive with food he wouldn't eat and stay for conversations he couldn't have. The workshop felt cavernous despite being full of wooden tools. He discovered small reminders of Elena's presence everywhere. Her coffee mug on the workbench, forgotten in her rush to leave. Notes in her precise handwriting analyzing burn patterns. A hair elastic on the floor near where she'd sat cross-legged reviewing photographs. At tea night, after Sarah went home, Marcus sat alone in the workshop. The empty chair across from his felt like an accusation. He pulled out old photographs of his wife, trying to remember what loving someone felt like before grief calcified into fear. One picture captured her laughing at something beyond the camera's frame, joy radiating from her expression. She would have hated what he'd become. This careful, controlled existence where safety mattered more than living. Where protecting himself meant teaching the world that connection always ended in loss. Meanwhile, across Portland, Elena pursued leads with the obsessive focus of someone who had nothing left to lose. She parked outside Hartley Properties corporate headquarters, documenting executive movements. She cross-referenced property records until her eyes burned. She slept 3 hours a night in her car, surviving on determination and caffeine. The investigation consumed everything, filling the space where Marcus had briefly existed. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Last warning. Walk away or join Sarah Reid. Elena stared at the message, thumb hovering over Marcus's contact. She should tell him. They should face this threat together. Instead, she deleted the text and returned to her surveillance, alone as she'd always been. Sarah Chen found her brother that evening staring at his wife's photograph, tears on his face for the first time in 3 years. "She want you to fight," Sarah said quietly. "Not high." The call came at 2 in the morning from a number Marcus didn't recognize. Marcus Reid, the voice belonged to an older man, strained with worry. "This is David Chun, Elena Morrison's former mentor. She's been missing for 14 hours. Last location ping was at the Hartley Properties document storage facility on Industrial Boulevard. Her phone's been off since. Marcus was already moving, pulling on clothes, his body operating on the same autopilot that had carried him into the burning mansion. He found Elena's car in the facility parking lot, driver's door ajar, her investigation bag spilled across the asphalt. The building's emergency exit showed forced entry, and the smell hit him before he reached the door. Smoke. Carbon monoxide. Deliberate fire. Marcus didn't hesitate this time. Didn't freeze. Didn't calculate risk against reward. He called 911, gave his location, and entered the building using every skill his 3-year absence hadn't erased. Navigation by smoke patterns. Reading heat signatures. Testing structural integrity with each step. He found Elena in a locked records room, unconscious amid scattered documents she'd been photographing when the fire started. Evidence of systematic arson spread across the floor around her, the proof they'd been seeking, nearly purchased with her life. Marcus broke through, lifting her with strength born from terror and determination. Her eyes fluttered open as he carried her toward fresh air. "Marcus." Her voice was barely a whisper. "How did you? I've got you." The words came fierce and certain. "I'm not letting go. Not this time." Her hand found his shirt, gripping fabric with surprising strength. "The documents. I got everything. The proof. Forget the proof." His voice broke as he cleared the exit, sirens screaming in the distance. "Nothing matters if I lose you too." Their eyes met, smoke-stained faces inches apart, and everything unspoken between them crystallized into clarity. Sarah arrived as paramedics loaded Elena into the ambulance and found her brother holding the investigator's hand like it was the only thing keeping him anchored to earth. 6 months later, Marcus Reid stood on the steps of the newly established Sarah Reid Fire Safety Foundation, his hand intertwined with Elena Morrison's as they faced the community gathering for the grand opening. The federal prosecution of Hartley Properties executives had made national headlines. The firefighter and the investigator who'd exposed systematic corporate arson became symbols of ordinary people refusing to accept corruption as inevitable. Settlement money funded this moment, a nonprofit providing free fire safety education advocacy for victims, and support for whistleblowers who chose integrity over silence. Marcus had returned to firefighting, but as a trainer rather than active duty. Teaching the next generation meant honoring his wife's memory by preventing future tragedies. Elena rebuilt her investigation career with a reputation not just restored but celebrated, consulting on cases nationwide while maintaining Portland as home base, their home. The apartment above the workshop where Elena's investigation files now lived alongside Marcus's furniture blueprints, where morning coffee became a shared ritual, where two broken people learned that healing sometimes required burning away the protective walls built from past trauma. Sarah Chun stood beside them, her role in their partnership extending beyond sister to trusted friend and foundation board member. Her advocacy for victims' families had become a nonprofit's emotional core. Some fires destroy everything, Marcus told the assembled crowd, his voice steady with hard-won wisdom. But others burn away what we don't need, revealing what we should have been all along. Elena's voice joined his, the partnership they'd forged in crisis now extending to every aspect of their lives. The bravest thing isn't running into fire. It's choosing to build something new from the ashes. Together. Above them, a banner featuring Sarah Reid's photograph honored the woman whose death had sparked their mission. Her legacy lived not in grief, but in protection extended to others. True courage isn't the absence of fear. It's recognizing that some things are worth the risk of burning.